much like death in Texas, it's pretty much impossible to escape Hillary Clinton. She is everywhere, and she reemerged this week to denounce the president's immigration policies. Watch.
Absorbing immigrants, creating opportunities that take advantage of our diversity, opening the doors. All of that has been to our advantage. And for those who want to turn the clock back on that and say somehow that has hurt America, they are just not walking around with their eyes open.
Well, if, like most people in Brooklyn, you just can't get enough, it might be your lucky day. She clearly wants to run again for the presidency for a third time, but a new obstacle has appeared, brand new obstacle, new pictures. They show Hillary Clinton enjoying a dinner with disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein in December 2016 after she lost the election. Now that we know that virtually everyone close to Weinstein knew what he was really like, you got to wonder, what did Hillary Clinton know? And what's her response to that picture? Not that she'll ever be asked. Tammy Bruce is a New York radio host, and she joins us tonight. Tammy, what do you think?
Well, new death in Texas, right? Yeah, great point. She's doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Look, what's interesting is that I believe it was on December 13th. And this was clearly after the shock, in about a month of within a month of the shock of the election loss. That's when you bring the people closest to you. That's when you are having dinner with the most important people. They've known Weinstein for decades. It's not like they met him a few weeks before the election. They've known him for decades. Weinstein contributed money to Bill Clinton's defense fund during the Monica Lewinsky dynamic. So he's been in their lives in a very important way for a very long time. And yes, we know that with Weinstein, literally everybody knew. And she's, in trouble one way or another. Either she's the only person on earth who did not know, which means she shouldn't be president, or she did know and is misrepresenting exactly what she knew anyway. So she can't win in this regard. And this is, of course, her problem overall with her situation. She can't take responsibility for the nature of the choices she's made.
He's also awful. I know Harvey Weinstein. I know a lot of people who know him very well. You won't meet a single person who knew Harvey who doesn't say the same thing, which he's repulsive.
Yeah.
I mean, from his table manners to his attitude, why would she voluntarily hang around with someone like that? I mean, I think honestly, that's a fair question.
Right. And look, I think that you have friendships and relationships that are transactional, that somebody does things for you, or it's an important kind of collection within your group. But he was important enough to have dinner with just a few weeks after that election loss. And I've said to you, and I'll say it again, this is what I want people to realize. If Hillary Clinton had won, the Me Too movement never would have started. People like Harvey Weinstein would be elevated into more positions of power. The Eric Schneiderman of New York would have more power. None of the things that we see as being important revelations in society that make people's lives better would not have occurred, and the people like that would have been elevated. And there she is complaining about Donald Trump for deporting criminal, illegal aliens to also make people's lives better, to improve our day-to-day living quality, especially amongst legal immigrants, people of color, and people within the inner city, generally people who did not vote for him, but his immediate actions have been improving the quality of life for all of us. And there she is.
Well, that's exactly it.
Lamenting and being caught with, of course, the worst among us. And I think every day we're reminded about the value of the choices we made in November of 2016.
Well, but that's it. I mean, rich people love low-wage, low-skilled immigration. Why wouldn't they? I mean, that's who does their laundry. The only people who get shafted are working class and poor people who get completely bulldozed by it. Why does nobody ever say that?
I think that there is such a bubble, that there is a lack of a connection with those regular people, with the normals, if you will, with that swath of middle America that has been, Atlas for, 200 years, holding up the world on their shoulders, delivering their sons and daughters and loved ones for the military, feeding the world, and they've been taken for granted. And it's maybe not as dramatic, not as exciting to talk about them as it is to talk about the drama of illegal immigration and of the elites. But we know who's really understanding the impact of what Donald Trump is doing, and how their lives, when their lives improve in that middle section of America, that is what improves the lives of everyone on this planet.
Tammy, great to see you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Which is, boy, this is making me uncomfortable. I feel sorry for this person.
Well, that was my first reaction. My second reaction, Tucker, was to say, if I ever run for president, I want these same Macedonian campaign consultants who are the geniuses. That's who the Russians go to when they want to really sew up a presidential campaign.
That's too good. Have you noticed? We're making fun of Hillary Clinton, and actually my sympathy for her is sincere because I thought this was deranged, what she said today. But she's not the first. She's the third Democratic presidential candidate in a row to lose and still make the case, I didn't actually lose. Kerry made that case. Gore made that case. Do you see a theme here? Well,
in fairness, Al Gore and John Kerry lost to conventional candidates. What Donald Trump did was unprecedented. He'd never been elected to the school board. He had no ground game. He spent less money than anybody since Chester Arthur. He veered erratically off message, so sometimes he'd be talking about Make America Great Again, and 10 minutes later he'd be going on about how Macy's stock has tanked since they stopped carrying Trump ties, and yet somehow he manages to beat the most qualified candidate ever to run for the presidency of the United States. And the Democrats and the candidate herself just can't accept that this happened. And in a sense, they're right. If it was a military campaign, they'd be teaching it at staff colleges across the world for the next 2 centuries.
Well, I
it's
think
remarkable.
That's a fair point. No, you're making a great point. I mean, this is a pretty conventional defense mechanism, psychological reaction to it. I wish it weren't dragging our foreign policy down along with it, though.
No, and I think that's true. I mean, if you were Putin at this stage, let's say that Trump is a Russian agent. If you were Putin, you'd have to think you'd actually got a twofer, because right now Hillary is telling the American people whatever happens, the Russians are behind it. That's how cunning they are. That's how their power is so all-pervasive. Later in that bizarre performance, she starts going on about how Cambridge Analytica, this data mining group, apparently insisted in return for providing Trump with data that he hire Kellyanne Conway and Steve Bannon. So as Hillary sees it, Kellyanne Conway is some kind of Soviet honey trap who's at the heart of this of this campaign. I don't even understand that, because Cambridge Analytica, as I understand it, was set up by some British company. So the plot thickens because now we've got rogue double agents from MI6, probably Kim Philby, if you remember.
And Anthony Blunt.
Cold War day. I mean, but that's the thing. And what you have to ask is, who's behind the Russians? Well, it's this Cambridge Analytica. So it's the British behind but who's behind the British? Well, it's the Macedonians. They're behind everything.
But I guess what's so ludicrous about this is they're blaming the Trump campaign's collusion with Russia. Now, the Russians, whatever their skills, can't build a reliable escalator. I don't think they could pull this off. And the Trump campaign was pure message. That's all they had. They had no money. They were disorganized deeply in a lot of ways. There's no way they could have. I mean, if you know anything about how it actually happened, this is insane.
Well, the fantastic thing about the Trump campaign, if you forgive me coming the unassimilated foreigner on you, Tucker, but presidential politics, the conventions had gotten so hopelessly boring. And Hillary ran an utterly conventional campaign. She paid talentless, mediocre people large sums of money to do the same things they've done for every other candidate. And Trump just comes along, he's bored stiff by all that, and it says he just does it his way and blows all those stupid conventions out of the water. And the Republicans hated him for doing that, and the Democrats still can't actually believe he did it.
Mark Stein, you are single-handedly making me pro-immigration, at least in your case. Thank you for joining us tonight.
More Macedonian immigrants, Tucker. That's what we need.
They're already here. Oh! Thanks, Mark. Probably the greatest thing the internet has ever produced. And yet it turns out Hillary Clinton wasn't having the time of her life on that debate stage last year. Her new book, What Happened, is just 3 weeks away from release. You probably pre-ordered it. But we have newly released excerpts. In them, Clinton describes her visceral disgust, her revulsion at sharing a debate stage with Donald Trump.
It was the second presidential debate, and Donald Trump was looming behind me. 2 days before, the world heard him brag about groping women. Now we were on a small stage, and no matter where I walked, he followed me closely, staring at me, making faces. It was incredibly uncomfortable. He was literally breathing down my neck. My skin crawled. It was one of those moments where you wish you could hit pause and ask everyone watching, well, what would you do? Do you stay calm, keep smiling, and carry on as if he weren't repeatedly invading your space? Or do you turn, look him in the eye, and say loudly and clearly, back up, you creep, get away from me?
That's from the audiobook. Imagine listening to that on a long road trip. I don't even think Hillary voters would want to do that. Mark Stein has written, I think, more books than Hillary. He joins us now. So, Mark, there's this moment in there. I don't think we just played it, but she says this. She said, these are her thoughts as she's on the debate stage with Trump. She says, I know you love to intimidate women, but you can't intimidate me. And yet then she basically goes on to explain how intimidated she is by him. Which is it? Is she the victim or the strong person?
Yeah, that's a fact. When you said that was the audio book, by the way, I've already got that voice in my car. It's the one that tells you to fasten your seatbelt. I don't actually need an extended director's
I don't think I'm allowed to laugh, but I am anyway.
But initially when I heard it, when she's talking about this guy looming behind her, making her feel uncomfortable, invading her space with a reputation for groping women, and she wants to say, back off, you creep, I thought she was recalling her first date with Bill. But apparently not. This is how she feels about Trump. And there is something actually quite amazing, even when we go back to what you've been talking about tonight with the ESPN and all that, that Hillary Clinton is so unself-aware that she writes the central passage of her book is about what it's like to be made to feel uncomfortable by a man with a reputation for groping women. Well, now you know how Paula and Monica and Kathleen and Juanita and all the rest of them feel. It's incredible. This could have been an interesting book, but if it's as phony as this is just going to be, I believe, her third unread